OMG. Oh my God. Tech Spanier has been hacked. And we know who hacked them. But they do not. And Mario Ruiz de Velasco has taken the opportunity in the press conference to point the finger indirectly at Lola Badiola. OMG. Okay, we're going to do something slightly different in the analysis of this chapter. We will discuss a couple of common expressions, but our real focus is going to be on public speaking skills. We will talk in depth about the speech that Mario Ruiz de Velasco makes and the techniques he uses to make his words powerful, memorable, and persuasive. Let's start with the question from the journalist that prompts the speech.
What does it say about the safety of our data if the company protecting our data is vulnerable to attack? There was a murmur around the press conference. This was the elephant in the room, and it needed to be addressed.
The elephant in the room. This is a wonderful expression. But what does it mean? Well, it's a very important and sometimes controversial issue that everybody knows about, but nobody wants to talk about. Let's imagine you're sitting in your Monday morning meeting and you're talking about administrative issues with your colleagues. And there happens to be an African elephant sitting in the corner of the room behind you. And nobody mentions it in the discussion. Everybody just ignores the fact that there is this 2-ton beast sitting behind you. That's the elephant in the room. So, for example, if the company is struggling, it's losing money, there are going to be redundancies. Some people are going to lose their jobs. And in the Monday morning meeting, the manager just continues with the usual administrative issues. He doesn't address the real situation. He doesn't address the problems that the company is having and the fact that some people might lose their jobs because he doesn't want to, or he doesn't know how to, or maybe he's not allowed to. He doesn't deal with the elephant in the room. Now, in our story, the elephant in the room in the press conference is the fact that Tech Spanier, the company that is meant to protect other companies, has itself been hacked. So this is the issue that everybody has to address, that everybody's interested in. It's an important issue and it's controversial. And so up until the point the journalist asks the question, people have been ignoring the elephant in the room. So how does Mario Ruiz de Velasco respond to this question? Let's have another listen.
We are living in unprecedented times, said Mario Ruiz de Velasco calmly and confidently, having prepared for the questions with a rehearsed response that was loaded with rhetorical devices.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about public speaking. Whenever you make a speech, a presentation, or in this case, deliver a press conference, you need to know who your audience is, how they will respond, and potentially the questions that they will ask. You need to adapt your style and the content of your speech according to the type of audience you have. Now, in most cases, your audience will be friendly, believe it or not. They will want you to succeed. If you make a speech at the Christmas party, or at a wedding, or even a company presentation, your listeners will want you to succeed. They are on your side. But what do you do if you face a hostile audience? Imagine you are the manager of a factory and you need to reduce wages. How would you announce your proposal? What would you say? Imagine you are a politician and you need to increase taxes. What would you say in your speech? Or in this case, you are the CEO of a company and you need to explain a costly failure to your shareholders, to your customers, or to the awaiting journalists. How do you approach this leadership challenge? Well, here's some advice if you ever have to face a hostile audience. Firstly, you've got to be aware that your audience is going to be hostile. Right? You need to put yourself in their shoes. You need to be ready for their anger. Do not be surprised by their reaction. Secondly, you need to be prepared. You need to anticipate their questions, prepare your answers, and practice, practice, practice. Ask your colleagues to role play with you. Ask them to attack you with the strongest criticisms you can imagine. Thirdly, empathize with your audience. Do not fight fire with fire. Listen actively. Allow them to express themselves. Allow them to release their frustration. And then try to genuinely understand their point of view. And finally, once everyone has been allowed to release their anger and their frustration, introduce new information. Make a new suggestion. Move the conversation forwards into the future. Now, in our story, it's clear that Mario Ruiz de Velasco has anticipated the questions from the audience. He has prepared his responses and practiced them. And so he remains calm and in control. And then eventually, he introduces new information to move the conversation forwards. He also uses some very effective rhetorical devices in his speech to persuade the listening audience to agree with him. Have a listen to the following again.
Tech Spania will fight back. Tech Spania will prevail. Tech Spania will continue to counteract the causes of chaos.
Okay, there are a couple of rhetorical devices in this sentence. And by that I mean a choice of words that sounds good, that's memorable. And the fact is, if something sounds good and is memorable, it is more likely to be believed, whether it's true or not. The first device is called anaphora. 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 And this is the repetition of a word or a phrase over and over again. So it becomes like a mantra. So the audience never forgets. In this case, Tech Spania will. Tech Spania will. Tech Spania will. This is just like Winston Churchill's great wartime speech. We will fight them on the beaches. We will fight them on the landing grounds. We will fight them and we will never surrender. Just like Martin Luther King's Lincoln Memorial Address. I have a dream. I have a dream. I have a dream. Which he repeats 8 times in his 17-minute speech. So the speaker repeats this phrase in order that the audience remembers it and truly absorbs the message. That is anaphora. The second device that Mario Ruiz de Velasco uses is called alliteration. This is the repetition of a single letter at the beginning of successive words. And it just sounds great. It's used in poetry, in advertising, and in a lot of common expressions. Texpania will continue to counteract the causes of chaos. Lots of K sounds there. It's similar to Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream speech, in which he says the following: I want my children to grow up in a world where they are not judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. Color of their skin, content of their character. Counteract the causes of chaos. The repetition of the K sound is a form of alliteration. It makes the sentence sound pleasant. It gives it rhythm. And there are lots of examples of alliteration in the world of business. Simply, we have companies like PayPal, P, Coca-Cola, K, and of course, Krispy Kreme donuts. And it wouldn't be the same if you listened to a TED conference instead of listening to a TED talk, right? They chose the word talk very consciously because they've created an alliteration, TED Talks. We love alliteration. It's all around us. And once again, it just makes everything sound great. And if something sounds great, your audience is more likely to believe it. Okay, before we end today's session, let's look at a couple of useful expressions. Listen to this again.
Was it an inside job? What do you mean? Most malicious attacks are made by a company's current or ex-employees. Do you think that was the case here?
An inside job is used to describe illegal activity that is perpetrated by the people who work for the organization being targeted. According to Cybercrime magazine, 66% of data breaches involve an insider. So insiders are the biggest cyber threat to a company. Its own employees, past or present, are the biggest cyber threat to a company. And this article continues with the claim that only 10% of security budgets are focused on internal threats. So they conclude that employees are stealing the organization's data, and companies are not doing enough to stop it. OMG, I'm starting to feel paranoid about my own business. Anyway, it is therefore a very reasonable question for the journalist to ask Ruiz de Velasco. Was this an inside job? And he takes the opportunity to implicate Lola Badiola. What a cunning and dangerous man he is. Okay, finally, have a listen to the last paragraph of the text again.
I hope that I can be the invisible hand that guides the police towards these criminals, whomsoever they may be.
What's an invisible hand in this context? Well, it's a hidden power that is directing an activity or a project. Now, do you remember in the first few episodes, we heard Ruiz de Velasco tell Lola that he was the invisible hand that had been guiding her career. And then when Lola quit the company on bad terms, the last thing she said to the CEO was, I would shake your hand if it weren't invisible. Nice one, Lola. Well, Ruiz de Velasco hasn't forgotten that exchange and is using the expression once again. It's an implicit message to Lola. It's a threat. I personally am going to ruin you. And on that dramatic note, we end today's session. We hope you can join us again for the next episode of our podcast. And if you do want live interactive business English classes with me, then sign up to Club Gratton. Just search Club Gratton on Google and you will find us. Until then, keep practicing and just make sure that there isn't an elephant in your room.